Arizona falls to Washington State. Let me get this. Actually, let me turn the TV off behind me. John Schuster, run with things for a second.
It's good to see that the start of this show is off to the kind of performance that defined Arizona basketball today. Little from the TMI category. I come onto these broadcasts, folks who listen, and folks who are watching my excitable machinations and the rest of it, constantly wondering, wow, why is it that Shu's got so much life and he's so excitable and so he's always full of energy? Well, one of the reasons is that I like my afternoon naps, and my my preferred time is somewhere in the neighborhood of 2:30, 3 o'clock. It's nice to see that apparently the Arizona basketball team has the same circadian rhythm that I do. This was a lethargic disaster. And there really isn't there really isn't a whole heck of a lot of positive to say about it. So I think the overall question here is going to be, and it'll be interesting to get a feel for a lot of the folks who are going to comment and be rightfully irritated in the process. If this is one of those early one-off January, you just weren't into it, and right, you just kind of hit a wall and whatever it was and everything, you couldn't figure it out and everything just kind of went in your, just went against you and you were never able to get it back, or whether this is a larger trend that's partially Arizona playing poorly. This is a terrible game for Arizona. They pretty much didn't execute at any point. So obviously it's Arizona's worst game of the year, but the Cats now have been in a few games here that have been a little bit closer during the course of a variety of them. Washington a couple nights ago, the ASU rally. I think the question is this a trend, or is this one of those things a little bit more involved where, I don't know if Arizona had a bad day, or if this is a point in the season where Arizona is going to have to make necessary adjustments to get better.
Shoot, I'll be honest with you. And again, Arizona's a top 10 team. Take that, Rudy Bastillo. So we're going to get to you, and I'll give you a little bit of credit here, but not right now. Arizona is still a very good team, obviously, but there are real concerns here. They were absolutely terrible this entire game. Tubelis was the only one that came and played. I get that Ballo was still dealing with the effects of some sickness, but at the end of the day, you're still have him out there, and Ballo, quite frankly, was terrible.
Yeah.
I think the thing that really sticks out at times, and again, got to preface this by saying it's still 15-2. But the thing that sticks out at times, really, at least to me, is the lack of athleticism. I mean, the lack of just kind of dynamic athleticism out there. When you watch it like last year, and maybe we took it for granted, but you had Mathurin, who was a 10-plus athlete. You had Dalen Terry. You had Christian Coloco. You watch this group right here, Kurz, Ramey, Larson, Ballo, there really isn't anything that's overwhelming there from an athletic perspective. And I think Arizona fans are certainly used to seeing that, at least.
Now, up to this point, Arizona's done a good job of dealing with teams against them who have, if you wanted to call them better athletes, quote unquote, you could. Does ASU have better athletes in Arizona? Yeah, probably. Does Washington have better athletes in Arizona? Yeah, probably. Does Washington State have better athletes in Arizona at this stage? Probably. Does Tennessee have better athletes in Arizona? Yeah. In whatever technical definition you want to use for quote unquote athlete. But Arizona has done a good job being a better team and having an advantage on the inside to be able to get the necessary W's and move through. Today was just a disastrous game and a lot of things. But I think there's one stat that perhaps we should pay a little bit more attention to that points to what you're saying and illustrates the most significant difference, and it trickles down into a variety of areas. And that's the number of steals that Arizona gets per game. Mm-hmm. Arizona ranks in the bottom half of the country in forcing turnovers.
Right.
When you have a running team, especially a team that likes to run consistently and open up big leads, as we've been accustomed to Arizona doing, it helps that you can do that with, to borrow your phrase, athletes on the perimeter, because then you can force the action a little bit more consistently. You can get into the passing lanes.
We saw that for 25 years with Lute Olson.
And you saw it last year on a regular basis with Tommy Lloyd's first team. The way that Arizona runs this year is a little bit different. Arizona runs off rebounding. They're a very good, generally speaking, a very good rebounding team. Mm-hmm. But there's a little bit of difference in that from the way that you can consistently get up and down the court. About 3 weeks ago, when we talked about the Tennessee game, one of the things that I thought was really interesting and is going to be an issue for Arizona in the tournament is that Arizona is going to have to win games in the half court just because of the way they're built, and that teams are going to understand ways to be able to slow them down a little bit. And Arizona's been able, I think, figured out in that regard. So Arizona's going to have to be a very good half-court team. Generally speaking, what they've been able to do effectively is pound it on the inside and let Tubelis and Ballo take over and utilize their inherent advantage from that degree, and then be good enough from the perimeter to make enough shots to be good on the offensive end. But their perimeter defense doesn't have the personnel like it did last year to be able to consistently force possessions, and as a result of that, get easy buckets in the process. So the result of this is a team scoring in the high 60s and low 70s as opposed to a team scoring nearly 90 points a game.
Right. And there's a lot of guys that we're going to get to here. But I think, let's see here. I think Mugshot 318, great name, by the way, says, to quote our good friend Kevin Woodman, sounds like it would be some punk rock band from California. But he said, our strength this year is the Ballo Tubelis combo. If they aren't 100%, our offense gets out of rhythm. And we've talked about that nonstop, Shu, that when Arizona is really rolling, and even in the games when Arizona is not rolling, but it's closer than you think, Tubelis and Ballo are good for about 35 points and 20 rebounds, something like that. Tubelis obviously came to play today. He was the best player on the court. I believe that he's going to be one of 7 consensus. He's going to become the 7th consensus first team AP All-American in school history, but that's probably for another talk. But when Ballo is playing like that, you see that margin for error that Arizona has really goes out the window.
Yeah, it does. And Arizona has to be better from the perimeter and find offense from other spots. And that's where, if Ballo is struggling from that regard and Pelle Larsson isn't picking up the difference, then it hurts Arizona. If Ramey isn't picking up the difference, it hurts Arizona. If Henderson isn't picking up the difference, it hurts Arizona. You get, if Crease isn't picking up the difference, it hurts Arizona. You get where I'm going with this. Mm-hmm. So yeah, Arizona's, again, inherent advantage is 2 big guys who can be offensive threats on the inside. Not a lot of teams have that. It's going to be Arizona, assuming that Ballo is healthy. And I have a variety of potential generic theories as to, what's
too much Taco Bell.
That's one generic theory. The other is he played 14 minutes a game last year. And he's been thrust into action closer to 30 a game. And I think after a while, and I've talked about this on some of the other shows, I expect Ballo's minutes to be trailed back a little bit in anticipation of trying to make a push in March. But to do that, you need Vasar to be better. And Vasar hasn't had a good week either. So there's a lot of right now. It obviously wasn't a good week for Arizona basketball. They split at home, which you don't like, but they weren't very good again. Washington flustered them. And obviously they had no answer for Washington State team today. And it's a bad loss. And it's the type of loss that in the course of, when you're trying to figure out resumes and the rest of it, it could be a seeding hurting loss. It could be the type of loss that changes potentially if you're making a decision from one to another. Maybe it changes Arizona's geography in terms of where they're playing. I don't know. There's still obviously a lot of conference play to go. And there are a lot of teams that are going to have bad nights. Arizona's bad day was this one. And now you hope that they can rectify whatever it is that's going on. And you also hope that this was one of those one-offs in a relatively long basketball season.
All right. Travis Strauss has, I think, a good point here. And I want to get to this and kind of the overarching theme here. And we're going to get to all your comments. Again, they're coming in hot and heavy. Appreciate all of you. But first, 2 things. Four Peaks. You only got 1 peak today from the U of A. Normally, you're going to need 2 or 3 peaks, at least 2 peaks. You only got 1 peak. But the original Four Peaks is in Tempe. The official brew of PHNX Sports. Check it out. or you can come to the Tap and Bottle watch parties and hang out with us as well and consume some Four Peaks. Great stuff. You can go up there in Tempe, root against ASU, or come to Tap and Bottle and root for U of A with us. Enjoy responsibly, 21 and up. Check the show notes and link in the description. And DraftKings. All right, here's the deal. John Schuster and I single-handedly turned the Detroit Pistons into a good team last year by telling all of you to bet against the Pistons. I'm not going to tell you that anymore, but I'm going to tell you to bet on a team. If you put down $5, you can get up to $200 in free plays. That's simple, that easy. Now, again, it got to be 21 and up, Arizona only. Gambling problem, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP. But that's the deal right there. You got to get hop on DraftKings, check it out, check out the show notes and the link in the description. All right, Travis Strauss right here says, if the Cats can't get something from the backcourt, it'll be a quick march. I read something on message board that I think is very apropos regarding this, where it said, and the guy put that Arizona, he thinks, has maybe one of the widest margins for what you could possibly
in March.
Yeah, that he said I could easily see them getting bounced in the second round. I could also see them making the Elite Eight or beyond. He said there you could really see both of those because when they're clicking, how tough they are, and they've done this against your Tennessees of the world, your Indianas. But then when they're not clicking or they don't get great performances from the bigs, it's a problem. And you saw that today against Washington State. This didn't feel fluky, what we saw today. Now, again, if they're to play again in a week, I would take Washington.
Didn't it?
It didn't feel fluky to me because Washington State was getting Arizona. What we saw today, they just weren't good. Now, if they were to play in a week, I think Arizona wins. But if you don't have Ballo being Ballo, to me, that's a big problem right there. And to his point, I'll let you ridicule me in a second because you should. But Strauss, if the Cats don't get something from the backcourt, it'll be a quick march. Courtney Ramey was a guy that I think we had huge hopes for, especially after Maui, and he has been very, as the kids like to say, meh out there. And
is that what the kids like to say? Did you invent that word?
I did not invent that word. I don't even know if it's
Arizona as a team. Let me see if I can pull this off. I won't be able to pull this off, so I'll botch this. It was pretty much meh Arizona all day long today.
Right.
Up and down the roster, yeah, Ballo rightfully deserves to be a focal point. He was terrible today. Larson was awful today. Ramey has gone through a series of games now where he hasn't played particularly well. Henderson didn't help. Kriisa wasn't particularly good. Like you said, Tubelis was the one guy.
Right.
So what you can do at the beginning of sentences here is insert name, didn't play very well today.
Right.
And that's, sometimes that performance happens. Is it possible as a result of the makeup of this team and certain circumstances and even matchups that Arizona could be in for a short tournament run? Sure. But I'm also not necessarily convinced that you can't say the same thing about a lot of the top tier of college basketball either.
Totally agree. Everybody's got flaws. I mean, you look at it and, UConn is a team everybody loves, rightfully so. If you've watched UConn, you know that they're very, very good. UConn had a 2-game losing streak last week. Granted, losing to Xavier is no problem, but they also lost to Providence by 13 as well. You look at UCLA, they beat Washington State by 1 earlier, actually last week. So other teams that are very highly thought of have many of the same picadillos. Ooh. As
also not to make an excuse here again, and we don't need to reinforce it. You saw it. Arizona played terrible basketball today, but there is a comma splice there. However, Washington State to me looks like one of those teams that can be a real problem in the conference tournament.
Right.
They've
got some players.
They're not at the place where they're probably not equipped to go on a 4-day tear to get into the tournament like some of the Altman Oregon teams were. But they I think they're going to be a pretty consistent problem. And big picture wise, I guess if you want to look at it to some degree, one of the areas that we've talked about that was a concern for Arizona was that athletic team that had that had Spring at 5 spots on the floor, that could stretch you out a little bit and maybe cause some, some problems in areas where we're not necessarily comfortable what it is that Arizona can do. So the conference this year has a team that is like that in ASU, in Oregon, in the 2 Washington schools at least. And we haven't even gotten to the top tier of the conference yet. So, that's not a bad, at least Arizona's going to have an understanding heading into the tournament what it's like to play against teams, generally speaking, from an overall style standpoint, that could cause them the most problems. And Washington State is one of the examples of a number of teams in this league, for whatever reason, that seem to exist on that front.
All right. Let's see. I got to go back here and find it, but there was a great point about hitting the transfer portal. Ty Webb, he says, hoping Lloyd starts looking hard at the transfer portal to get some better guard play for next season, because his perimeter is what it is. No ball handling, no athleticism, not athletes. I feel kind of at this day in the game that, and again, I'm going to steal a phrase that Doug Gottlieb told me, and I'm going to pretend that, I'm not going to pretend because I'm giving him credit. But the thing with the transfer portal, though, is that, again, like Gottlieb said, there are no pros in the transfer portal. There aren't All-Americans in the transfer portal. There's pieces. There's nice, a guy that can maybe fill a void, but you're not going to get and I know you're not saying this, Ty, but you're not going to get Damon Stoudemire in the transfer portal. You're not those guys just because they're off to the NBA. So I think that's something, if you're really going to improve some of the issues on the perimeter, that's got to have to be through straight high school recruiting, in my opinion. John Schuster.
Thank you. Hey, high school recruiting is something that Arizona's going to have to pay attention to. And, do they need an uptick in athleticism? I think that's fair to say. There is an area, however, and it's on the wing. And there are 2 players on the wing who we haven't even talked about. As bad as everybody else was today, Oumar Ballo didn't even get on the floor. And he's the closest player, if he developed to the level that I think Arizona had hoped that he would, that from a defensive standpoint could cause perimeter consternation because of his size.
Mm-hmm.
From
and
there,
his length.
From there, you could trickle down a little bit to what Larson could do off the ball with those sorts of things, what Henderson could do in situations like that. And then maybe you'd be in a slightly better position to at least a little bit replace the athleticism that Arizona had on the perimeter last year. From a guard standpoint, you want Boswell's young, so you kind of give him a pass, but you anticipate that he's going to keep improving. You hope the improvement is a significant leap over the course of the next couple months. Ramey's in a slump, and you hope he works out of it, and it's just not one of those things where he's just packed it in for some reason. So there's a lot of and Kriisa is what he is. Kriisa had some and overall, again, Arizona was 4 of 22 from 3-point range.
Yeah.
That's just that, but they actually had some open looks. So if they're normal from 3-point range, not even necessarily good, this becomes a much more interesting game, I think. And it was one of those matchups where Arizona had opportunities to do that, but something across the board just wasn't right. And I don't know if it wasn't right because everybody just had a bad shooting day, or there was something else going on that, was in the moment, or it's a larger thing that has to be dealt with. And at this stage, in the here and now, I just don't know. And it's always kind of difficult when you play as poorly as you do and you see what's in front of you to try to extrapolate whether this is a huge issue that's going to be Arizona's bugaboo for the remainder of the season, or whether this was just a one-off that pretty much every team in college basketball goes through at some stage.
All right, Rudy Bastiles coming in here with another troll. All right, Mr. Bastiles. Xavier looks good and well coached so far. I will remind you of this, that in the last 5 years under Miller, Arizona won 0 tournament games. There's my mic drop.
That was that was a solid retort right there. Not that for 45 seconds on that.
Take a minute 45 if you want.
I'm glad Miller is succeeding at Xavier, and I'm hoping that he's been humbled and willing to improve his approach on offense. Had Sean Miller stayed at Arizona, that would not have happened. So if Miller was still at Arizona, Arizona teams would have played exactly the same way, more than likely. He needed frustrating things to happen for him and frustrating things to happen for Arizona fans and, for the program as a whole, for both of them to get into positions where they can improve. And Miller is doing, if anyone's surprised that he's taking a Xavier team in his first year and they're overachieving, you haven't been paying attention to what Miller's coaching capabilities are.
Right.
But he's much better offensively and much more willing to try different things than he ever was at Arizona. And I don't think magically, if Miller was still here, that he'd be doing that at the U of A, because he would still have the arrogance that I think kind of got in his way. And I'm hopeful that, a lot of that's out of his system. There's a willingness to learn and adjust and adapt, and he can be successful at Xavier. And Arizona has a coach that has an overall record of 46-6 so far. It's not like both programs are doing badly. It's not like Arizona has completely tanked as a result of having Tommy Lloyd in the fold. So if both of them are successful,
you mean wait a second? You mean to tell me that 46-6 to start off his career at Arizona, not good?
It's rough. Yeah, it's rough. Clearly pretty rough. Although,
real quick,
obviously this was by far Arizona's worst game under Lloyd, I think.
Right. Ty, as soon as I said that, I was hoping that you weren't next level, because Texas is the one example. Marcus Carr is absolutely fantastic. Totally agree with you on that. But guys like that generally aren't there. But touche, good point. All right. We're touching base with Estonia right now. Correa, as a proud Estonian, I take every criticism about Estonia players way too personally. Well, I'm going to tell you one thing right here. You come to the right place, not for criticism, but we are big fans of Henry Vasar on this show. I believe that Henry Vasar is going to be a problem in this conference and that he will play in the NBA. Stick with us, even if we criticize a little bit. Big picture, we have Estonia's back right here. Always remember that. I don't know if that's a good thing. Oh, but one thing that also has my back.
Do you know that before you get to that, I have a Talon Tigers rugby jersey. Perhaps I'll wear it one day.
You should wear it next post game.
Okay. I won't be around for the next post game, but I'll wear it for the next post game, perhaps, that I am on.
Where are you going to be?
I'm going to not be here.
Okay, well, fair enough. All right. But now, guess who also has my back? More Furniture, morfurniture.com. Now, you might say to yourself, Mike, what really has your back? More Furniture does. You can get some of the best furniture out there for all shapes and sizes of people right there. And it's very comfortable. It could be for 6'10" Brody Dryden or myself. And it's comfortable. It's well priced. Check it out. morfurniture.com. If it's good enough for the Four Peaks, it's good enough for any of us. And Game Time. Let's just say that you wanted to watch this botched operation of a game today at the last second. And you're like, I don't know where to go. 621 Cats doesn't have the answers. Game Time has the answers. Game Time checks it out. Many times you can get 60% off. And on top of that, it's they can get you into concerts, venues. Who needs a radio hookup when you got Game Time right there? Check it out, Game Time. That's for you, Rudy. All right, now let's see here. People asking, Shu, are you going to be hitting the town? Shu with the little emoji, old bald guy hitting the town. I like
that'll be a heck of a look. Yeah.
Right.
All right.
Now, let's talk big picture, though, about this team. So, again, this was a bad week across the board, like you said, for Arizona, because, yes, Arizona beat Washington, but they looked terrible doing it. And in this game, it didn't even look like the effort was really there, which I think is kind of the inexcusable part. Is this something that we're worried about, or is this something that we'll know a little bit more next week? Because I'm getting a little worried that they do play down to teams that just aren't very good.
They just, it did have that feeling today. And I've been a little dismissive of they play down to their competition argument. But it certainly felt like they came into this game thinking that they could just go through the motions. And to Washington State's credit, they made Arizona illustrate that wasn't a good thing. Maybe, just maybe, this is one of those ugly lessons that Arizona learns and gets to the point where they recognize that that's just not an approach you can take. But is there reason? Sure, there's reason to be concerned. But is it alarming just yet? I don't think so. Because again, a couple examples here. As bad as today's game was, and again, dreadful. Nobody's going to argue that. Even me,
with all due respect, it was a bad game.
Even Contrarian probably isn't going to argue that this was
Cosmic Contrarian. Let's see if he's in here.
Unless Cosmic Contrarian's an ASU fan and thinks it's a great game because Arizona was dreadful. But nevertheless, there's dread, and Arizona was dread. Anyway, it's one of those things where, you know, you're just trying to navigate and figure out exactly what it is that Arizona can do well and how they go about improving. And if you look even at today's game, they cut the lead to 5 and then had 3 god-awful consecutive possessions that ended the run. But even in those god-awful possessions, they had open looks. There were a couple times where there were threes that were available that just didn't go in. And that's where you kind of have an idea. It's just one of those days. There was a possession they had, and I think they were eventually fouled where they had 5 shots.
Yeah, where
on one possession down the floor.
4 or 5 shots. Yeah.
I mean, that's just a microcosm of sometimes you just can't shoot the ball. Sometimes, right. And it was bad across the board. So, you know,
let me ask you this.
Yeah.
If you get a normal, because by all, it sounds like Oumar Ballo is still dealing with the stomach bug again. I don't know if it's too much Taco Bell. I actually had 2 people text me. I don't know what his deal was. I was just throwing that out there.
Why do you bag on Taco Bell?
I love Taco Bell.
Oh, it's a love-hate thing you got going on with Taco Bell.
Yeah, I know. I'm passive aggressive. But yeah, but let's just say if Oumar Ballo is normal Oumar Ballo performance today. By the way, I remember that dong from those commercials. Oh, that sounded terrible.
Wow, you're watching some weird commercials,
right?
Man.
For sure. But if Oumar Ballo had his normal game, where does Arizona win this game?
Probably. They probably have enough, and they get Washington State into foul trouble, and you know, it may not be pretty, but they're probably on the winning side of this game because things trickle down a little bit. Right. And if you have Ballo and Tubelis on it lightens up the load. One complements the other. When there's just one that plays well, Arizona's not as good, and then that works its way into other positions, and they need a guy or a couple guys in other positions who can pick up the slack. And today, nobody did it for Tubelis. Tubelis tried like crazy and was a mismatch. Was clearly a mismatch. Remember at the beginning of the game, Arizona's entire strategy on its first 5-6 possessions, just pounded on the inside. They don't have an answer for Tubelis. I think Tubelis scored the first 7 points.
He did. He had 13 points in the first 7 minutes.
Yeah, and then Arizona didn't score for the next 8 minutes. Whatever it was. It was just, you know, one of those across the board. Arizona was bad, and they put too much pressure on Tubelis, and they didn't help him out. Arizona's been good enough usually to get Ballo to play well, which complements Tubelis or vice versa. And then you have an opportunity to have open looks from 3, and guys, and Arizona's team is good enough to score across the board and make things balanced enough to be effective. And today, nobody outside of Tubelis was.
Jordan Moon.
Ballo's fault? I don't think it was. Ballo's an easy one to pick on, and again, he was awful today, and everyone recognizes it. But again, up and down the roster, everybody else other than Tubelis was terrible today too.
Jordan Moon. True story. I actually went to elementary school with a kid named Jordan Moon. This is not the same Jordan Moon, but he makes a very interesting point. Asking about if Pella takes contested 3-pointers. I've noticed this as well, that when Pella takes a 3, if there is anybody within like 3 feet of him, it looks like it's almost a prayer, where even if he's kind of standing, open, it still looks like he's kind of just wishing the ball into the basket. That's something I didn't expect, to be honest with you. I thought Pella Larson would be a 40+% 3-point shooter. And just judging by what I've seen in his confidence, he's not close to that.
Yeah, Mike, and it doesn't even look like he's anywhere near that, does he?
Right.
It's not just from a statistical standpoint, but just how
it looks uncomfortable.
Are. You know, Kriisa, you expect to go through some pockets here and there, but very often Kriisa's fairly close to the rim. Larson often misses fairly badly, and that's not a positive indication of the way things can go. But this is one of those if areas that Arizona now has a couple of months to work on again. You have to be competent from 3-point range, because what teams are going to do against Arizona is obvious. They're going to pack it in, and they're going to try to make it as difficult as possible on the disadvantage that they have, and that's trying to defend Tubelis and Ballo. So when you do that, your other players have to be able to pick up the slack. And over the course of the last couple of weeks, there have been some pretty significant pockets where that hasn't happened. And today was the most glaring example across the board of that taking place.
What I would caution though, people though, is again, when you watch around college basketball this year, all these teams have flaws. Now there are certainly teams that if I'm Arizona, I'm not looking at looking forward to playing in the NCAA tournament. There's certainly some teams out there, and we've talked about this before. The template for Arizona, and again, I know what just happened with Washington State, but if you're going to go against Arizona, the best way to be able to beat them is to be physical and to be able to pressure and to be able to, showcase your athleticism, because those are some things that Arizona, lacks to a certain extent. But, and by the way, Chef Duarte in here, again, back the A, my friend, back the A. The movement is strong. Now, but this is, I think we're going to find out a lot more about this team, because what is it? The Oregon school's coming up next?
I think that's right.
Yeah. All right. So you got Oregon coming up. Oregon's looked terrible this year. Oregon State has as well. But Oregon always plays Arizona tough. I mean, even last year. And you should be able to beat Oregon State as well. If you come back from there and, a split or both these games are really ugly, you probably start worrying a little bit.
Well, I think there's reason to believe the Oregon game is going to be ugly. I think Arizona has an opportunity to be pretty successful against Oregon State. Oregon's athleticism is a concern. The concern, however, may be that both teams play poorly. That Oregon does a good job taking Arizona out of its comfort zone, and Oregon on the offensive end has no clue what the game of basketball still is. I'm still not completely out on Oregon based on Dana Altman's track record.
Right.
I may be wrong. I may be, I'm still on the fence on them. And I know he never got it right last year. He might not get it right this year, but I'm not at that point in the first week in January where we all get all freaked out and count out Oregon. But I would hope that if Oregon improves to the level that Altman as a coach is capable perhaps of getting them, maybe that doesn't happen next week.
Right.
But that's obvious. Those are obviously games that they are circling as well. So the template is out there, but there are a lot of things that Arizona can do, most notably on the inside, that is an advantage that puts pressure on a lot of the other elite teams as well. Tennessee's a good basketball team, and Arizona was better. Creighton is going to get this figured out. Arizona was better. Indiana's
a very good team. I watched that game very closely. You could tell that Arizona and Indiana were,
These are still teams that Arizona beat. I think Arizona's good. And I think they're one of the better teams in the country among a hand, I don't know, 10, 12 teams overall that have a pretty legitimate chance, that have advantages. If I was to rank one team right now that I thought was the best of the country, that was best possession by possession and game to game, I would think Houston is the one that shoulders above everybody.
Very good.
Because even their loss, they had a 15-point lead. So they're the one team that I kind of look at that said, if I had to pick a favorite, it'd probably be them going in. But does that mean they're not beatable as well? Certainly not. And Arizona has a distinct advantage that gives them an opportunity to be successful. And that's a good thing to have once you come into tournament time.
All right. Now, let me tell you something else that gives you a distinct advantage of being successful, especially if you're in college. Illegal Pete's. Now, you might say to yourself, what am I going to do on a weekend right here? I want some high energy. I want to be able to go mingle with people, drink, you name it. Illegal Pete's has it. Not only do they have it, they have good food. They have, again, good scenery. Everything you want, Illegal Pete's has. You can go to the Tempe location, or if you're cool, you can be down here in Tucson at University. Illegal Pete's, love to have them on board with us. We're going to be having some more news, I think, about Illegal Pete's and Tap and Bottle before we get to our Tap and Bottle, the official place for all the away game watch parties. Come check it out. Matthew Bothwell on there. He has vouched for it. Matthew is the man. John Schuster has shown up. It's a fun time. Yell at the TV. Yell at ASU. Make fun of me. You got Four Peaks on. You got Four Peaks there and Mountain Mike's Pizza. Check it out. All right. I got a funny joke for everybody out there.
Oh, goody. Oh,
all right.
Boy. Is the joke going to be as funny as you wear your hat?
What's wrong with my hat?
Oh, nothing. Anyway, go ahead. I want to hear your joke.
I like how. What's wrong with my hat?
I wouldn't. Nothing.
All right. Here's what. All right. Dana Altman is from Crete, Nebraska, What do you call somebody, John Schuster, that moves out of Crete, Nebraska?
Let me think on that one. Let me think on that one. I bet
An
there's
excretion.
Oh,
Get it?
That is possibly, it's not, but it's possibly the greatest joke ever told in the history of mankind.
Sounded like it just came from Bill Walton. Okay.
Even better than that.
All right.
Yes.
I want to put this one right here. It's not all doom and gloom. It's just one very bad game. The team should not be characterized by mistakes it makes, but how it reacts to those mistakes and takes corrective action. I love that. But you got to, everybody else here, we've got to remember as well that this team is still, again, they're not going to be ranked 5th after this game, but they are, this is still a team that will probably be in the top 10. This is a team, and they're certainly better than I thought they'd be this year. I thought that they'd be about a 17 to 20 team, something like that. They're somewhere in that fringe 10 range right there. So this is still a good team. This was an awful weekend, though.
Well, Mike, who's better?
Well, like you said,
now you got to come up with 10 teams that are better.
All right. Well, I'll give you a couple
on a day-to-day, matchup to matchup in the tournament is better.
Houston, I think, is definitely better. Texas, well, Texas doesn't have a coach now, so I cross them off. No, and your point's well taken. There's not a team out there that I look at on a given day outside of Houston. I think Houston is a very tough matchup for Arizona. Not that they're significantly better. I think they're a tough matchup for Arizona, but there's not a team out there that I look at and say Arizona can't beat them on a neutral court, and not the thing where we need 19 threes to be able to go in to be able to beat them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. Can Kansas beat Arizona? Yeah. Can
UCLA can beat Arizona?
Can UCLA beat Arizona? Yeah. There are teams in that top tier that can obviously get W's against the Cats, and the Cats can get W's against all of them.
Right. All right. Everybody out there, really appreciate you. I know it was a bummer game, but you know what? Being able to, oh, by the way, this is very funny. Garrett, has the team used all their energy at Illegal Pete's, which is great, by the way. Check out Illegal Pete's. But again, appreciate all of you. You're all the ones that make the show. Big shout out again. I've said his name twice. I'll say it one more time. Generally, our biggest turnouts are games when Arizona wins. But obviously, right. Rudy doesn't come to those games. Rudy comes to the games when we lose. But I'm grateful for Rudy either way because he pushes the viewing numbers up. So I appreciate you, dude. But everybody out there, really appreciate you. And Scott Parker, we talked about Courtney Ramey. Arizona's going to be a lot of trouble if he's averaging 3 or 4 points per game. I'm not saying that I need him to average 18, but I need him to average a little bit more than that. But I will be back with you tomorrow. John Schuster, I guess, will be on vacation.
Yeah, I'm just wandering locales. Right.
All right. Well, you know what? You deserve it.
Thanks. It's very kind.
But again, appreciate all of you. Hundreds of comments. You guys are the best. I will be back with you tomorrow. But for John Schuster, I'm Mike Luke. You've been listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast.